Good day, everyone. Today we're going to be working on one of the tasks for the Axis Back Challenge, and that's to make natural cordage and to use it in some aspect. So on the last camping trip that I went on with my daughter, I ran upon these vines. They're called wineberry vines, and they make pretty effective cordage. There's not a lot of interruptions in the fibers, so I went ahead and picked some of these up to go ahead and make the cordage. Now you can recognize these because they're typically red, and they have a lot of small thorns on them. So the first part of the task is to clean those thorns off. What I have is my ember catch, a small piece of leather. I'm just going to basically run that along here just to get rid of all those thorns, because I don't quite feel like taking them out of my fingers. And here you can get a real good sense, looking at it, as to what kind of thorns we're looking at. And they don't really hurt. There are some that hurt, but I mean, for the most part, it's a fuzz, but it's still kind of irritating. So I'm going to get this cleaned off as much as possible. But when I do the next step of the process, which is getting the woody bits off of here, it'll take care of whatever I don't get with the leather. Now, unfortunately, because I picked these when we were out camping, I had planned on processing them the next day, and they've dried out a bit, which is going to make them a little difficult to process, but not too bad. What I'll do is I'll end up soaking them for a bit just to get them back to a pliable state before I actually go in. But right now, removing these thorns is not going to be that big of a deal. So I'm just going to go ahead and process all these down. I got some good length to them, so hopefully I can get a good bit of cordage out of this. Here you can see some of the thorns on the piece of leather. I'd rather have it on the leather than on me. Pith needs to go, and this. Now normally, if I wasn't using an axe, I'd use the spine of my knife or a piece of flint. But considering this is the axe challenge, I'll be using the head or the blade of my axe to scrape apart the woody bits. Now, depending on the quality of cordage that you want, this step is not always necessary, but if you don't scrape apart the woody bits or scrape off the woody bits, you're going to create inferior cordage. So I'm just going to sit there and drag my knife around. And there you can see what I'm talking about. That's the green part that we want. You can see how soaking it for just a little bit softens it up enough for me to get that through. Now, another reason for actually soaking it is that the fibers themselves, independently, are pretty brittle. So if you started this process, there's a good chance that you'd probably be damaging the fibers, which is what you want. This right here allows you to get the fibers that are a little bit more pliable, and then once you actually weave them together, it'll be a lot stronger than they are independently. Independently, they're pretty weak and fragile. This part here, this green bit, is actually the part that's going to become your fibers once you get rid of that pith on the inside. So I'm going to continue scraping this and hating life, I guess. I'm just going to cut it off right about here. There we go. So from that standpoint, got most of the bark off. It's not perfect, but from that standpoint, what's left will either flake off when we actually do the reverse wrap on this, or it'll just stay on and it'll weaken the fiber, but it's not going to be that significant. So we'll move on to the next step, which is actually getting the fibers off the pith. Crushing the vine allows us to actually split it, and once we split it, we'll be able to peel off the fiber. So I'm just going to take the back of my axe. I'm not going to pulverize it, I'm just going to break it up. If you see that one piece is thicker than the other, what you'll actually do is pull on that piece. Let me get this into a position. So I stick one finger in right here, and that helps guide it down. Then I hold it in my palms, and I just move it down. Now this one's cooperating quite a bit, so one piece isn't necessarily thicker than the other. But if you see, this piece here is starting to get skinny. So what I'll do is I'll actually pull a little bit on this piece, on this side, the thicker side, and move that split back to the center. And now that we have it split, you can see the pith. And this is the part that we're going to want to remove from the fibers on the outside. So I'm going to come up here, and I'm actually going to take it and force it this way. Because what I'll do is then I'll just take it and peel that pith right out of there. Now some of this pith is still going to stay, and you can see that it hasn't completely removed it. We can come back to that in a bit. So you can see here where I'm pulling off the pith. This is going to require multiple goes. So I'm just trying to get the bulk out of it right now. But if you can see this white part here, let's see if I can get it close. If you bend this, you'll see this part coming off. This is more of the pith. You need to get rid of all that, because that's going to do nothing more than weaken your cordage significantly. This stuff is not pliable when dry. But I'm just trying to get the bulk of it off right now. Now, there's a good chance it won't come off. You just have to work it. So there's some pith here. I'm just going to take it and force it together. The fibers will bend. The pith won't. The pith will actually break, like what you're seeing here. And you can just grab the end and just peel it off. And you'll have to do, like I said, not an easy or fast process, but it's not difficult. It's just tedious. So we can see here we have some of the pith left. Just bend it. This one's going to come off easily. So I just removed the large section of pith. And this is what you're actually going to end up with right here, just these fibers. So I'll continue removing the pith from these and getting these fibers prepped for the next step, which will actually be weaving them. So here we have some of our fibers, and this isn't all of them. This is just what I brought out right now to put together. We're going to start with a longer one to go ahead and start our cordage. We're going to be doing a reverse wrap here, and as we get this wound, we will continue to add new pieces. So when I have fibers like this, they are a little dry and a little brittle, so you're going to want to get it just slightly damp. You're not going to want to get it too wet, because these fibers, they will absorb the water, they'll grow, and if you get them too damp when you're wrapping them, you'll end up with an issue to when they dry out. They'll no longer be tight. Here's an example of one that I got a little too damp on, and if you look at it, you can see gaps. There it is if the camera ever focuses. You'll see gaps right here and around. It weakens the cordage. And unfortunately, I didn't need this cordage for anything important. You can see the holes here where it was too wet, it swelled, and then when it dried, you end up with gaps in your cordage. This is not what you want. So you don't want to get it too wet. You just want it damp enough to where it is flexible. So I'm going to take my first piece of cordage here, or my first fiber, whatever. I'm basically going to take it, I'm going to find somewhere close to the center, not quite at the center, but pretty close. The reason you don't want it at the center is when you go to weave other pieces into it, you'll have to add pieces at the exact same location, and it'll make the fiber weak. So what I'm going to do is the first piece, I'm actually just going to take it and put in my mouth and put my tongue on it. I'm just going to take it, and with this finger I'm going to twist away from me. What I'm looking for it to do is kink back up on itself. When it kinks back up on itself, that's your first twist. You're going to keep these separated because this is particularly troublesome with natural cordage because they just want to hang up on themselves, but we'll get there. Licking my fingers and doing the twist. So I'm going to hold the first kink in my thumb, between my thumb and forefinger. Then I'm going to take this, I'm going to twist it, I guess that would be clockwise. Then I'm going to swing over, put my finger in between, and then just twist it around. I'm just going to continue that process. I'm just going to advance my thumb and forefinger up to get a grip on the edge and just keep going. Again, keeping things damp. I'll occasionally lick my fingers, and that'll just transfer to the cordage. You'll end up with cordage that looks like that. It'll get easier as you move on with it. So eventually, you're going to come to the end. So we can see we still have plenty on this one, but this one here is kind of short. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to take another piece and I'm going to just lay it right in here. Now a lot of people will just go ahead and put it on the end here. I lay it in there just because that's what I do. And then when I take these two pieces, I'll actually roll them together. So it got a little dark outside, so have to go ahead and finish this up inside. Call it quits there. So this is what the finished product actually looks like, more or less. So I'm just going to go ahead and tie a stopper knot right here. Keep it from unraveling. And hopefully that'll be enough. But if not, like I said, we've got more material. So here we are on to the last part of the task, and that is to create something with the cordage that we created. So yesterday I went out and I gathered some grasses, and we're going to go ahead and finish up the project by making a scrub brush. you know, not a very glamorous thing, but something kind of necessary at camp. So I'm just going to take some of these bundles, even them up, chop them up, tie them together. So I have these. I'm just going to take my cordage, and hopefully it'll stand up to what I'm about ready to do to it. On this end, I'm just going to make a slip knot. Tie a stopper knot in here. I'm going to take the bundle, tie it somewhere around here, and feed it through. And tie it up pretty well. It doesn't have to be super tight, but tight enough. I'm just going to reverse that, put a little tension on it, and start wrapping it in the opposite direction. Making sure that I get some tension to hold it all together. It's holding up pretty well. I say that, I'm just going to break. I'm just going to take this and tie a clove hitch on it. Put it down just a little bit. There we go. Now I'm going to use the axe just to clean up the edges. What we effectively have now is something that we can scrub a pan with. So, there we have a scrub brush. Not exciting, but functional.